Hello, I'm
Hello.
Kat. You want to try again?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I do. I'm sorry.
All right. Hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Hayley.
And this is Night Classy, a podcast where two teachers unwind, sip wine, and discuss the topics they wish they could teach at school. What are we drinking?
Today we are switching it up. We have Franzia. And let me check here. The box is way down low. We have a dark red blend. It has 34 glasses and it was the cheapest for the most. So that is why we bought it. We have this one and another one.
We're trying to minimize our trips to the grocery store. So we bought as big of a box as we could this week.
Yeah.
Normally we do bought a box, but it's a little smaller.
Yeah. So we're going for a quantity over quality this time.
Not that it's bad quality though. I think it tastes pretty good.
Right. It is pretty good. I prefer Boda Box or what is the other one? Nighthawk.
That's bought a box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Franzi is like listening to us, like
crossing
we'll
our
never
names
get a
off
Franzia
sponsorship. Darn. Actually, that is. I mean,
yeah, that'd be a
Franzia, if
huge
you want to
loss.
sponsor us.
We never realized how much we love Franzia until Slap the Bag in college, but we were too drunk. And then we actually realized it in a sober mind recording Night Classy this very episode.
I love Franzia. You know, I'm on board. I'm a fan.
Right.
Haley's looking at me like, no, you're not. I'm a fan of the cost versus quantity ratio.
Yeah, that's true. It is. We get more for less.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't been our go-to, but it's our quarantine go-to.
Go-to for sure.
That's a win.
Yeah.
Because we're in quarantine.
We are in quarantine. Speaking of that, are there any updates? I feel like we've just been sitting around doing nothing.
I feel like every day is the same day. It's like Groundhog Day, the movie, over and over again. Like Tommy the other day, I think I told you this. He was like, it's Thursday. Like it's almost Friday. And I was like, Tommy, every day is Thursday in quarantine to me.
There are 3 days of the week, yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yeah.
And nothing else. Because, it's weird. We're like we said, our district isn't doing virtual learning. So we'll have like a staff meeting every once in a while. But other than that, we don't really do work.
There's not a lot of teaching work. It's some Zoom calls here and there.
Yeah.
But we're just hanging out, communicating with parents and students. Yeah, not a lot going on.
Not a whole lot. Props to those teachers still working.
had a fun night the other night.
We did. Alec and I decided to have there was this rumor going around in Memphis that they were closing all the liquor stores on April 3rd. So we went to the liquor store and bought like a half G of tequila because we were like, we need something. Turns out that was an April Fool's joke, so it was all for naught. But then we had this half G of tequila and stuff to make margaritas and all this triple sec. So we just drank margaritas and drank more margaritas and drank more margaritas.
You guys had yourselves a night.
We did. Hayley, we're recording on Saturday today. We usually record on Friday, but I texted Hayley that morning. I'm like, Hayley, I'm so sorry. Like, we have to postpone Night Classy because there's no way I'll be ready to drink tonight. We were so hungover and we had destroyed the house and like our drunkenness.
Oh my God. I walked in the next morning when she had texted me that like I went grocery shopping, got them some Gatorade. I walked in and I just laughed. Like it was so funny. Alec like immediately started doing the dishes. He was like, I'm so sorry. And it just looked like a college frat house.
Yeah, we had cooked dinner, which was tacos while we were wasted. And so we like accumulated all these dishes. The sink was piled up. The kitchen was a mess. We had like been playing games or something. There was like stuff all over the table, and then we had ordered like the living room table, and then we had ordered takeout that morning, so there was like takeout boxes all over the dining room table. And I had a staff meeting that morning, so I like went to like the corner of the dining room table and faced the computer toward the wall,
just
so
in the
no
small
one could
corner
see
of the house where everything looks fine.
Right. And I was so hungover, and one of the teachers in the Zoom call, they like messaged me privately and they're like, don't look so happy to be here because I was just like glaring at the camera, hungover and upset.
You got called out.
I got called out big time. So yeah, that's how quarantine's been going for us. Other than that, not a lot of updates.
No updates.
We've had like extra time to run our social media accounts. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Night Classy. Also, please, if you like this podcast even a little bit, listen to my voice. rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts because we want it and we need it.
We need it
desperately. So this is me groveling. Please do it.
Yeah, it takes like under 60 seconds.
Yeah, we did it for ourselves, so you can do it for us.
Yeah, we tested it out so we could give accurate information.
Yeah. So please do. We want more people to hear us. We want to reach more people. That's a large part of why we're doing this podcast, is because we want to communicate with you guys and produce entertaining content that other people actually listen to. So please freaking do it.
Yeah, take some action. We know you're not doing much else.
Yeah. We're doing this for you. So freaking
do something for us.
Do something for us. For once. And other than that, did I say you could email us? Email us at nightclassypod@gmail.com if you want to talk to us, or slide into our DMs. Either way, we're open for business. And I think it's time to get started.
Yep, let's do it.
Yeah. So the breathalyzer takes forever because it is faulty. So we did it beforehand, and I blew a 1.2.
And I blew 1.2, a
you're
point
right.
1.1, and you had a 0.12.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
welcome.
So I got to go first. My main sources for this one was Vice, Live Science, Newsweek, and PolyFact. Those are the websites that I used. And let's get into it. So, Hayley.
Yes.
There are people in this world that claim they're allergic to Wi-Fi.
Ooh, yeah, I saw a documentary one time about a woman like living in a cave because she was like, no electricity, no Wi-Fi, the radio waves.
Yeah. There are people that take this really seriously. And officially what this is called is electromagnetic hypersensitivity, and it's abbreviated as EHS. People who claim they suffer from EHS may experience all kinds of symptoms. There's really no end to the symptoms they say they experience. Some of the most common ones are reoccurring headaches, achy muscles, fatigue, stress, sleep disturbances, nausea, dizziness, skin irritation, such as like prickling or burning sensations or rashes. And this happens to them, they say, when they're in the presence of Wi-Fi, power lines, fluorescent lights, low energy lights, cell towers, laptops, cell phones, stuff like that. And so this really interested me. And I just kind of first, before I jump into the conclusions and the science, I just wanted to know what it was like for people that say they suffer from this. So I found a Vice article where this reporter went in to this woman, Martine's house, and she claims to be a sufferer of EHS.
What's your initial reaction?
Since I'm smart, that it's all bullshit, but okay. But whether or not it's bullshit, it is, science says, but
science said so, and so did my mom.
Yeah, but whether or not it is, people still suffer from it, no matter like what's causing this. So first, I just kind of want to talk about the experiences of people who suffer from EHS. And so this reporter went in and interviewed this woman, Martine, who's in her 40s. And he went to her house. She lives in Amsterdam, and she used to work at a legal department of high-profile refugee support organization. So she was a lawyer, and she had to leave that job because she claimed she had an overdose of Wi-Fi and radiation. So she was suffering from symptoms like headache and fatigue and nausea, and she self-diagnosed.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you narrow that down? Like, oh my God, my head hurts so bad. It's got to be the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure because they didn't really go into it in this article, but basically she really believes that it's because of Wi-Fi and electromagnetic waves. So she left her job and went and now lives with her dad out in the country, and they don't have Wi-Fi. They limit electronic use, stuff like that. So she is living there now, and now her job, she offers legal support to others who suffer from electromagnetic hypersensitivity. Oh my God, hypersensitivity. So as you can imagine, if you have this affliction, you can't work, you can't function in normal society. So they have to claim disability and unemployment. And so she kind of provides legal counsel to people that are suffering.
Did she get disability from this?
I don't think she does, but there are people that do, and we'll get into that.
Ooh, okay.
So basically, she is living there. It's not easy because most authorities consider it a psychological condition and believe that it's fear itself of radiation that is unhealthy and not actual radiation.
That's what I was thinking, just it being a mental block.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it pops up, though, that like all of a sudden one day she was like, I'm allergic to Wi-Fi and I have to get out.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things about this. So yeah, like I said, she lives with her dad now. And when this reporter was there, her friend Nanny was visiting as well, and who also claims to suffer from EHS. So this reporter actually like talked to Nanny, and she does not go outside without wearing protective headgear. And the reporter said this looks like a beekeeper's hat, but made out of like silver wiring.
Ooh,
yeah.
spooky.
And she cannot use her phone or computer without falling sick for the rest of the day. And Nanny does not live with Martine, but she lives in a house, I think with her children and maybe her husband, but she can't live in the house with them because they have Wi-Fi and electronics. So she lives in a trailer in the backyard that's lined with tinfoil.
Whoa. I'm just picturing her like sitting with a tinfoil hat. It's like peaked at the top, and she's like meditating or something. She's shaking also in this like visualization.
That's basically exactly how it is. And honestly, like we're laughing, but it is very sad. Like her family misses her. She only goes in the house to eat dinner. And she can't like function in society because she gets sick. And like no matter what the sickness is caused by, like she does feel it.
Yeah.
So it is a struggle for a lot of people. And this is more widespread than you think it was. There were no shortage of cases when I was looking this up. One of them includes this family of a 15-year-old girl who completed suicide and claimed that her family claims that the reason she did that was because she was suffering from debilitating headaches as a result of a Wi-Fi allergy. So they had switched to Ethernet in their home and like begged the school district to do the same. And the school district was like, no, that's baloney, and didn't. But so like there was no way for her to get away from Wi-Fi. She had these headaches all the time, and she really believed that Wi-Fi was causing it, or at least her mom did.
Mm-hmm.
And they had taken her to specialists, like done everything they could. And basically I think that the case with a lot of these people is they're getting chronic headaches, chronic nausea, chronic whatever it is, and no matter what specialist they go to, they tell them they can't find a reason for it. So this is kind of the conclusion they jump to.
Yeah, people really like to have some like reason for something. And how many people like, you know, watching Untold Stories of the ER, like medical shows like that, they're like, I went to specialist after specialist after specialist, and then finally I found my answer. And it also really helps, like if that girl's mom believed that that was the problem, like having someone influential in your life, like an adult, a mother, a father, back you up on that, like that's just gonna fuel it even more.
Totally. And chronic disease is a real issue. I think I saw a statistic that it takes like an average of 8 years or so for someone with a chronic disease to be diagnosed. So for so many people, there is this frustration where you jump from specialists and you can't get diagnosed, and it's a major problem in this country and with medical care. And so for some people, this is a natural conclusion. Not saying that everyone who suffers from EHS has a chronic illness. I mean, it might just be all psychological for a lot of these people, but that is a real problem. And that's where a lot of this stuff is bred from, I think. And so another case, recently, the parents of a 12-year-old boy filed a lawsuit in Massachusetts against his private school, claiming that the new industrial capacity Wi-Fi system at the school had led to their child's health problems. So there are people that think like as Wi-Fi gets stronger, it creates more health problems for people. And then there was another case in France. A woman won a disability settlement and was awarded a claim because her EHS that she suffered from was so severe that she had to live without electricity in a renovated barn in the mountains to protect herself from electromagnetic signals. And the court ruled in her favor that that the symptoms were disabling. So she was able to collect disability money for EHS. But that being said, this doesn't mean that the court recognizes EHS as a disability. It just recognizes that her symptoms were disabling enough where she needed money.
Yeah, that's an important distinction to make. I wish they would also like we see that your abilities are disabled, but and we're gonna give you this money, but also let's try and help you,
right?
and like give you the services,
Like whether or not this
can...
is what's causing it, you have so much anxiety and you do have you might have these symptoms that does make it difficult for you to work.
Part of me,
and if living in a barn far away like makes you feel better, okay.
A part of me is so just wanting it to believe them and buy into this. Honestly, I'm just like, well, I mean, Wi-Fi has only been around for like 30 years, and so we don't really know the effects long term, and like what if our genes are being affected? Okay, so I'm not saying I actually think that, but I'm saying
in response to that, let's get into the science a little bit. So according to the World Health Organization, there is no scientific basis to link EHS symptoms with electromagnetic frequency exposure. A 2007 study by the University of Essex found that participants claiming to have EHS only experienced symptoms when they were told that a phone mast nearby was switched on.
Ooh, I was wondering about that. I was like, I wonder if these people who experience EHS, if they were in a room and exposed to connectivity and things like that, if they would be able to tell and like just do a whole control and like make it an actual experiment. So they did.
And there are tons of studies like that. So this same study found that when participants didn't know whether the mask was on or not, the signals had seemingly no effect.
Yeah.
So it just whatever they were told, they responded to.
I love science.
Me too. And this is just one study, but a 2009 study reviewed 46 different studies that were similar to this one and concluded the same thing, that sufferers of EHS only experienced symptoms when they thought their trigger had been turned on, whether or not it was, and inversely didn't experience symptoms when they thought it was off, even if it wasn't.
Yeah.
So that's pretty telling. Dr. Lena Hiller at the Institute of Environmental Medicine in Sweden said that you can never prove that something does not exist. But if you fail time after time to prove something does exist, you do kind of say enough is enough. If we don't have any new ideas or approaches, we should accept that we can't find support for this hypothesis. And best current research supports the hypothesis that EHS is basically due to the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect basically is a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you think something will make you ill, it does. It's kind of the opposite of the placebo effect, where like if you think your medicine is going to help you, it helps you. The nocebo effect is like if you think something's going to hurt you or you think there will be side effects of a medicine, you experience the hurt or the side effects. And so that's kind of what experts have chalked this up to, is that like there are all these conspiracy theories out there that like Wi-Fi and radio waves are bad. And so if you're experiencing symptoms or you think you're experiencing symptoms, it's an easy thing to blame it on, and that like you start experiencing these symptoms when you think something's turned on because of the nocebo effect. Tommy just came in her house.
I saw the windows, not the windows, the blankets like billow. Oh my God, that scared me so much. Hi, Tommy.
All right, so Tommy just walked in and we had a brief moment there, but we're back. And this does make sense. Like, again, I feel like I'm like beating a dead horse, but if you're someone who suffers chronically from things like nausea, headaches, lethargy, you might latch onto any kind of an explanation you can. And of course, the internet is a cesspool of conspiracy theories and just nonsense. So you might latch onto something like that.
And if it's unexplained after going to several specialists, it's easy to latch on to something like that.
It's so easy to latch on to something like that. And a lot of people do, like even people with doctorates. So despite there being little to no scientific backing, this theory is gaining traction. And the number of people who claim to suffer from EHS has continuously gone up. And people are really organizing and doing things about this. So there's all these kinds of like refuges and like safe spots like popping up for people who suffer from this. So there's an independently run EHS refugee zone in Drôme, France, which is deep in a nature reserve where electromagnetic radiation emitters are banned. And this keeps the background levels down to about 1 to 2 microwatts per square meter. I don't really know what any of that means, but basically like there's not many radio waves there, and it's like a refugee zone. So like if you are someone who lost your job and like can't live in society because you allegedly suffer from EHS, you can go there to this place in France and they'll take care of you. Also, Green Bank, West Virginia has become an adopted home for some EHS sufferers because its location in the natural radio quiet zone, where all radio signals are banned to prevent interference with the nearby National Radio Astronomy Observatory. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, business idea. The Amish could make some money off of this. They could like the person with EHS files for disability, they get some money. They give a portion to the Amish. The Amish let them live with them and work with them, and everyone wins.
Totally. Yeah, that could be a thing.
That was a brain train.
You should pitch it to your Amish friends.
I have a few of them. I really
know
do.
You do. Do you want to tell the story? We're ahead of schedule. You can if you want.
I sold knives, as you all know, I'm sure. Maybe not. If you don't, I sold knives. Probably
not very many of you.
I sold knives residentially, and several of my customers were Amish, and a lot of them were in Kentucky and Indiana. And yeah, I went there. I've used an outhouse several times, and I've gotten to see, the Amish at work doing their thing, making dinner, building stuff, cutting wood, doing their thing. No electricity.
Right. I feel like it's really interesting because like the only interaction I've had with the Amish, and I'm sure a lot of people, is when you go to an Amish town, I guess. Mm-hmm. And like I've been there on the East Coast just to like watch them make butter, and like they do like little like stuff for tourists, but I've never like you've actually experienced it.
Yeah, I've been like in their houses, and it's something that could honestly just be a whole other topic. Yeah. From just my glimpse into their lives and seeing how the roles are different in the households, and it's very interesting, and it's cool that it's kind of like a relic to the past.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is cool. And like, not that they're a spectacle at all, but it's always interesting to see like a totally different culture, like subculture within the greater scope of your culture, which I think is what makes them so fascinating.
Yeah, I would agree.
But anyway, moving on. And there's also an EHS sufferer in South Africa who runs an EHS friendly farm with accommodations in the Western Cape. So this is all over the world, I think is what I'm trying to say. Like just my 3 examples, we had France, the United States, and Africa, South Africa. And it's widespread. People take this very seriously. And there are some doctors who acknowledge that EHS could be a valid medical condition. I didn't look into them I'm sure they're few or far between, but there are some. And the people who do believe this, especially in the medical field, compare EHS to illnesses like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and the Gulf War sickness, all of which were not recognized in the scientific community for a while after they emerged. So, of course, science is always evolving, and there are always new diseases, new illnesses coming up that like might have not been defined or acknowledged for a while until there was the science to back it up. Personally, and according to the studies I've read, I don't think this is one of them. But of course, there are people that believe it is.
Maybe it's a whole different case of like, rather than their bodies biologically actually being affected by these radio waves and things like that, that it is like a whole other category of like a mental illness.
That's exactly what I think it is, a whole nother category of mental illness. And that kind of goes into, so there's this scientist, Dr. Rubin, who does not believe that EHS is physically made, but he is quoted saying, "We've spent an awful lot of time and money testing whether electromagnetic fields cause symptoms. And what we haven't done is work out how we can treat these patients." So basically how I interpreted that is essentially it's pointless to try to prove or disprove that electromagnetic waves cause symptoms because there's no scientific validity to this on a cellular level. But we also can't dismiss these patients' symptoms because they are really feeling them. They're not lying. they're feeling these symptoms, and more energy should be put toward treating them, whether it's a mental illness or something else is causing these symptoms.
Yeah. No matter how you feel, it doesn't matter if someone dismisses it or not. Like, what matters is that you do feel it.
Exactly. You do feel it. And so doing this research, I just kind of want to not end, but it reminded me of some theories I've seen floating around the internet recently.
Ooh.
In regards to COVID-19 and how it relates to the EHS theory, I guess. So
okay, cool.
basically, the first theory I've come across is that coronavirus was used. First of all, I want to preface this by saying this is total baloney, but the first theory is just it's entertaining that it's out there. But basically, people think that coronavirus was used strategically as a tool to distract people from the launch of 5G internet. So do you?
I would have laughed so hard if you're like, I want to preface this with, this is complete truth and I believe it. It is my religion. Coronavirus has been released to mask.
I'm going to take that sound bit and send it to your employer. Anyway, so that's something I've seen on the internet. And so, yeah, do you remember like seeing it recently, like Sprint and Verizon keep like putting out ads talking about like 5G internet?
Yeah, I've seen one thing.
Yeah, so like basically, I don't really know, but there's faster internet out there now, and it kind of came out right before COVID did, so people think this is like distracting us, and the people that think that I have in my notes in all caps, this is misinformation. But people who claim that 5G exposure causes this claim that it causes at least 20 symptoms, including shortness of breath and fever.
Oh my God.
Which are symptoms similar to COVID-19.
I have this funny memory from 7th grade. There was this kid and he sat in front of me in Mr. Wolf's class. It was a history class, and it was right when I think it was either 2G or 3G was coming out. And there was this commercial that like it was a song. It was like, everybody look at me, I've got 3G. And he would sing it and he would like shake his head and go back and forth and shake his whole body, and he would sing it, and he had a bowl cut. So his hair was like all crazy, and he'd like just sing it all the time. Everybody look at me, I got 3G. He had like,
maybe he was suffering from symptoms.
That must be it. That's the only scientific answer.
But yeah, and even crazier one I've seen, and granted, I've only seen this on the subreddit called Insane People of Facebook, which basically like you screenshot crazy things that people on Facebook post and put them on this subreddit. And one post I saw, it was a copy pasta, and it reads, quote, 5G launched, COVID-19 2019. 3G launched, influenza 1998. 2G launched, cholera 1991.
What?
1G launched, influenza 1979. The introduction of radio waves caused the Spanish flu of 1918. Do you see a pattern? Every time the world gets an upgrade on its electromagnetic field, it messes up people breathing clearly. So yeah. So
I might believe. That might have convinced me.
Okay.
I'm just
for the
kidding.
record, Hayley believes. So basically people are blaming infectious diseases on radio waves, which is absolute insanity. It's absolute insanity. It has no basis in science, but I just want to end on something I wrote. So in conclusion, I want to make it clear that we are in no way making light of medical issues. Whatever the case, people who claim to suffer from EHS do experience debilitating symptoms, and it's important to acknowledge and be sensitive to that. It can be incredibly devastating and frustrating to suffer from chronic symptoms and go undiagnosed and constantly dismissed by doctors. So it makes sense that people may latch on to any explanation they can. However, time and time again, electromagnetics hypersensitivity has been disproven by double-blind laboratory tests, and it's safe to conclude that electromagnetic waves are not responsible for EHS sufferers' symptoms, and energy should be put toward finding what the cause of these patients' suffering is, whether it be physical or psychological, so that they may experience relief. That's it.
That was very interesting because I've seen things about that, but I've never done more research. So thank you for educating me.
You're welcome. Hopefully y'all feel educated as well. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
We drink a lot of wine here at Night Classy, but we appreciate alcohol in all forms.
So when we heard about Ethyl Ambrosia, a company that delivers gel shots to your door, we were here for it.
Ethyl Ambrosia is a female-owned and founded company that offers an elegant twist on the classic Jell-O shot.
Ethyl Ambrosia's recipe was formulated by one of the nation's top food scientists to be 100% vegan. So the shot's base is 3 kinds of seaweeds rather than gelatin. As a lifelong vegetarian, I have tried and failed so many times to make Jell-O shots. For me, they've always just never turned out right. They're always too runny or clumpy, but Ethyl Ambrosia has somehow nailed it. And even more, their seaweed base means that these shots don't melt until 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes them perfect for a trip to the pool or beach.
Now, I'm not vegan, but what got me hooked on these gel shots is their push-up cup. Like Dee Dee, Ethyl Ambrosia's founder, I'm a complete germaphobe and always have hated to stick my finger into the Jell-O shots to loosen the Jell-O. Ethyl Ambrosia's push-up cup allows you to push the gel out of the cup without ever having to use your fingers, and it just looks good.
We've tried the shots and we love them. Both of our favorite flavor is rosé, obviously, but they come in all kinds of other amazing flavors, including mojito, citrus punch, and Moscow Mule. Plus, they're 15% alcohol, so they are effective.
We love Ethyl Ambrosia, and we know you will too. So to order your own box of shots, head to ethylambrosia.com. It's ETHYLAMBROSIA.com and enter the promo code NIGHTCLASSY. All caps, no spaces, Night Classy at checkout for 15% off your order.
Hayley, has anyone ever been a total dick to you?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, good news. Now with Dicks by Mail, you can anonymously send them a box of candy dicks and politely tell them to eat one. Dicks by Mail sends dick-shaped candy anonymously to your friends, coworkers, grandma, whatever. Their products include gummy dicks, confetti dicks, and very realistic-looking chocolate dicks that come in both milk and white chocolate.
Oh my gosh, you know what? I can actually confirm they are very realistic-looking chocolate dicks. My best friend had one sent to her, and she was calling our whole friend group like, did you send this? Did you send this? She sent a picture in the group chat, like, and there are veins. Like, it is very realistic. I went over, ate some of her dick, you know, like best friends do. It's really quality chocolate too. And it's so fun, like the mystery of who it came from, and it's just such a funny product. It's great.
Right. It's meant to be a fun experience. Dicks by Mail was created to put a smile on people's faces. It's not meant to be a threat or a way to bully. If you're sending this with the intent to ruin someone's day, then maybe it's you who needs to eat a bag of dicks.
Probably. And if you want to eat a bag of dicks or put a smile on someone's face and a dick in their mouth, visit dicksbymail.com, dicksbymail.com, and enter the promo code NIGHTCLASSY, the name of this podcast, Night Classy, for 25% off of your first order. Go check it out now. Testing? Are we ready?
Bop, bop, bop.
Beep boop. Boop, boop. Might have to burp.
Do it into the mic. Test it out.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It is officially my turn for the lesson today, and it takes place in California in the mid-1970s in Yosemite National Park. So when I think about our national parks, I think, of course, nature, first things first. And I also just think naturally of wholesome, like family vacations, probably some cool stuff going on there, cool stuff to look at. And my story involves all of that, but with like a sprinkle of the stereotypical 70s culture as well.
Fun.
Okay. So this story is going to include rock climbing, vagabonds, and a lot of marijuana.
Great.
So there are several perspectives to tell this story from, and I'm going to start with the one that involves this community of people who reside in Yosemite National Park, and they stay at this campsite called Camp 4. Okay. Like the number 4. And so basically all these people who are living here at Camp 4, they all live to rock climb. Okay. Like they live to climb rocks, to hike, to ski, and do mountain things. No one who lives there works or has a job. And basically, they're just getting by any way that they can. They're just barely making it, but that's still enough. You know, they're known to steal food that's left on plates in town at restaurants when they need to. They tend to like mooch off of the temporary rich girlfriend or survive off of like some money that they ran into and have a little nest egg for a while. They're just kind of living by the seat of their pants. They're not concerned with money, belongings, or really anything else besides climbing.
I'm picturing like a group of people that just like runs around like raccoons.
That's basically it. They're just running around climbing instead of like scavenging. And one of the people who found himself living at this campsite, his name is Dale Bond. And he, to his parents' dissatisfaction, he dropped out of college.
Say no more.
He dropped out of college to go to Yosemite to climb rocks. And at this point in time, rock climbing was not really even a sport. Like it was just kind of being founded and coming up. Like everyone just kind of thought they were crazy. And so when Dale moved to Yosemite, he had nothing to his name. He just had a passion for climbing rocks. Okay. So I'm going to follow Dale's story for some of this lesson. So just remember the name Dale. And also, I'm sure this can go without saying, but I'm going to say it. Many of the people who are camping permanently at Camp 4 are also high on marijuana, acid, you know, the usual vagabond, mountain head type stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of these people are living peacefully alongside these park rangers, and the rangers just, they didn't really care about the campers' like ongoing presence in the park, even though it was technically illegal and not allowed and outside the realms of the law. Nothing, like everything was peaceful.
Okay, so it wasn't like an organized camp. They were just like camping in the park as a group.
Yeah, the campsite was like an official campsite, Camp 4, but you know, you're not supposed to stay there for like months and months at a time. Basically, like it was not allowed, but they allowed it.
Okay.
And that was all allowed up until a riot happened in Stoneman Meadow. So basically, other people were also camping illegally in Stoneman Meadow. And one day the park rangers just wanted to get them out. And they didn't want to leave, so they attacked the rangers, pulled them off their horses, and shit went down.
My God. In what world did they think that would work out well for them?
I know, right? You're like, I'm going to prove to you that I'm meant to be here by pulling you off your horse and attacking you. So everything changed from there. The government essentially put police in the park, and they had to be much more strict with the park rules than the rangers ever were. And this really created like a hostility between the climbers and the law enforcement officers. And to me, it seemed like this really changed everything. Like the atmosphere of the park was totally different. Now the rangers have guns. They're driving around in cars rather than riding on horseback without guns. So that in itself is just different. And then Dale also said in one of his interviews that at the time, they felt like Yosemite was their park, like the campers' park, and not theirs, like the law enforcement people. And so before this, like that distinction never had to be made and everything was peaceful. And then all of a sudden it was different.
So how long was this camp going on before this went down? Do you know?
I have no idea how long it was going on before Dale
It's probably
got there.
ambiguous. I would
Yeah,
guess.
it was. It seems to have been like established. So I'm not sure. But one day the change was like really clear when Dale was arrested at a restaurant in town. And basically what happened was he was in the restaurant, he saw a couple leave, and he went up to the empty table, like they had paid and everything, and he took someone's coffee and started to drink it after they had paid their bill and exited the restaurant. So that was just kind of a normal practice that the climbers got into by this time. Just kind of.
That still must be so annoying for the restaurant people.
Yeah.
Like to have these dirty high climbers come in and like eat leftover food off plates in your restaurant.
Yeah.
It'd piss me off.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's not even like they're choosing, like they're choosing to live like that. It's not like people that are actually desperate.
Yeah, like they could have a job and complete college. At least Dale could. Like he was in college, but he dropped out to pursue his dream of rock climbing. So that was a normal practice at the time, but the law enforcement agents were like more and more strict. So basically what happened was they were cracking down, and Dale got arrested and spent a week in jail for taking the coffee off the table. The judge ended up throwing the case out because he thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah, a week in jail is excessive.
Yeah, he was like, this is too much for a cup of coffee. But the park still wanted to punish him themselves, so they suspended him for 90 days.
Okay.
So to us, like 3 months to stay out of a national park, we're like, that's not that big of a deal. But in one of the interviews, Dale is like, this was my home. This is my second family. And there's no way that I can stay out. So he didn't.
Dale.
Right. So he camped out where he couldn't be found. He found a nice boulder garden near Camp 4. He set up his camp there so he could hang out with his friends at night, and he would just climb in places that either he couldn't be seen or they couldn't catch him during the day. Okay. So these people are obviously crazy about being in this park and climbing rocks, and Dale would hang out with his friends at night at Camp 4. So one night, they're all hanging out around the campfire, and 2 of Dale's friends come back after it's dark, and they're just like bouncing with excitement, and you can see it in them, and they're just all like razzled up about something, and they say, "Oh my God, you will not believe what we found."
What was it?
I'm going to pause here.
Okay.
And I'm going to shift here. So I'm going to set the scene for what the campers had found that night from a different perspective.
Okay.
So to do that, I have to backtrack a couple of months. Okay. So this story started in 1977. We're going to go back to December of 1976. So just a couple months before, John Glisky calls his wife Pam to check in with her and their 6-year-old. He's away from home for his work as a pilot. And at this point in time, his paranoia is through the roof. He thinks that someone is trying to kill them.
Oh my God.
So he calls in to check home with the wifey. Everything is fine there, and he decides to continue on with work. So the next morning, John, he heads down the runway at McCarran Airport in Nevada. Next to him is his co-pilot, his right-hand man, Jeff Nelson. They're always flying together, and they're in a twin engine that carries, like, it's been, I don't want to say edited, but like it's a twin engine. It carries a ton of fuel for super long trips, so it can go for a long time. It carries like 1,500 gallons, and they're headed south toward Mexico. They touch down in Baja, California later that day. Everything is cool. Everything is peachy. And they get there. They wait until night falls, and then they load their cargo with a team. And their cargo is just a casual 6,000 pounds of Mexican red hair. Oh, I mean,
cocaine?
Marijuana.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
So at this point in time in the 90s, like, marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug.
Yeah.
Super, super legal. So they load 3 tons of marijuana onto this plane.
Yeah.
And this is where things get interesting. So they take off the next morning. And like I said, the engine was refurbished, but mid-flight next morning, the engines fail. And basically, John and Jeff are plummeting towards Earth. They never make it to their destination. And the aircraft ends up showering pieces all across Yosemite Valley and Yosemite Highlands. Okay. So most of the aircraft, including the cockpit, John and Jeff, and the 3 tons of marijuana.
Oh my God.
They end up in Lower Merced Pass Lake.
Okay.
And John and Jeff were never heard from again.
Oh, okay. It's too bad.
Right. So no one heard or saw anything when the crash happened.
It just it all went into the lake?
Yeah. It just happened. And that was that. And it wasn't until weeks later, The crash site was discovered by 2 hikers who stumbled upon it, and they let the Yosemite National Park Rangers know. And by that time, the DEA had kind of like been on to John's case, and they were low-key investigating him, and they were curious about what was going on, and they were aware that like, okay, this plane that he took, it probably is like smuggling drugs, but they couldn't pinpoint where they were or what happened to the plane. Okay, so after it was reported and they like confirmed like, okay, this is John's plane, the park was absolutely rushed with DEA agents and a bunch of rangers. So they kind of like worked together because it was the national park and of course drug enforcement agents. They searched the site and they sent divers to check things out under the water. And that's in like January, February. So by the time they found it weeks later after the plane had crashed, the water was just flush with jet fuel and nasty stuff. They did uncover a good amount of marijuana. Some of it had floated to the surface and then frozen on the ice at the surface. Okay. So they uncovered some of that, and by now it was February, and they saw that a huge storm was coming in. It was going to be a huge blizzard. The conditions were unbearable. They're at 9,000 feet in elevation. The water is freezing. The ice is thick. It's tough for the divers to even get into the water and get through it because it's so dark and so cold, even though they're wearing wetsuits. It's really tough for them to investigate this site. There are a lot of hurdles in their way, including the weather. So they postpone the investigation until late spring, summertime. They leave the airplane and everything in it. Everyone heads out and they're going to return in a couple months. Okay. I'm all out of breath again. Okay. So I'm going to pick back up where we left off with Dale at Camp 4. So he was hanging out at Camp 4 at nighttime when 2 of his friends walked up all excited about this thing that they had discovered. I'm sure by now you can tell. Right. They discovered the plane. they crashed into Lower Merced Pass Lake. And not only did they discover the plane, but they discovered heaps and mounds of marijuana. Yeah. Okay. So not much can make hippies move faster than literal pounds and pounds of marijuana. Yeah. So they got to work. The campers at Camp 4 took axes and chainsaws to the lake, and they broke through the ice.
Oh my God. Yeah. So the marijuana they discovered, was that just like stuff that had washed up on shore, or do you know?
Yeah, it was like in these sacks. What is it called? Like what you would put potatoes in. What is that called?
Like a burlap sack?
Yeah, burlap sacks of marijuana had floated to the surface.
I feel like they would just be soaking wet.
They were, and I'll get to that. Okay. So they're soaking wet. They took chainsaws, axes. They want to break through the ice and cover these bundles that had floated to the surface. And even businesses around Yosemite had noticed that they had a huge spike in like chainsaw and like
I thought you were gonna say like potato chips and ice cream sales.
Probably that too. And so people were going to get this marijuana. Some people are estimated to have made around $20,000, which is about $125,000 these days.
Just selling chainsaws?
Just based off selling the marijuana that they got from the lake. So people were flocking to this lake as rumors spread by word of mouth about Dope Lake. That's what it was called.
I wonder if the fish were high.
Maybe so. They're probably high from all the jet fuel.
Yeah,
because
true.
This is like, this aircraft is putting out a ton of jet fuel. It's freaking soaked with jet fuel, and it's soaking wet. And so if you had airplane weed, what they called it, you knew, because it like combusted almost immediately. Yeah, that's one of the pictures I was going to show. You can see in this picture, and maybe we'll include this in some of our notes where the plane had crashed. Here's a picture of some of the people, like the hikers.
Oh my God, is that snow?
Yeah.
And why are they like in their underwear?
They probably got hot. They probably didn't want to get jet fuel on themselves. Yeah. It's so funny to me that the DA was like, oh, this is too much work. And then the hippies were like, we can do it.
Yeah. Well, the DA probably wasn't thinking they would like there'd be anyone trying to retrieve it. They're like, let's just wait till it warms up.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. They didn't think anyone would go up there. And it's not a simple hike at all to get this part of the park. Like, many people found themselves underdressed and underprepared, but they still ventured up to Dope Lake to see what they could get. So once they got it, they had to let it dry out since it had been just soaking in the lake. And then they shipped it out to LA, San Francisco. It was sold. And like I said, it was called airplane weed.
Yeah.
And even Dale, that's where I got that quote from. Dale stated, like, if you had airplane weed, you knew you had it. And so it's cited that people bought used cars with their money. They bought new hiking and camping equipment. Some people put themselves through college from the money that they made.
Wow.
One person bought a new Nikon camera, and it's rumored that John Bakar, a famous solo climber, he had enough cash stashed away from all of this to start his later successful climbing gear company.
Cool.
But he passed away, so we can't really no one could interview him. So yeah, all that happened in February, March, and trickled on to April. Now in April, authorities came back to the site to finish what they started. And they discovered that other people had discovered it, tampered with the site. All of the marijuana was gone.
All of it?
All 6,000 pounds.
Wow.
Was gone. And people were still venturing up there at that time to see if there's any marijuana left. And they only ended up arresting 2 people in this incident who had hiked up there after they had returned, and they were just looking for dope in Dope Lake, and they were just too late, and their arrest was later reversed because of a due process violation.
That's so unfortunate. You go up there and there's no weed and you get arrested.
Yeah. That's what you get. Early bird really does get the worm.
In this case.
So in conclusion, not a single person was ever convicted for anything that happened at Dope Lake. John Glisky and Jeff Nelson's bodies were found in June, and Pam's husband, John, obviously he never returned, but in an interview, she cited that she's glad that something good happened as a result of the crash after hearing about all the good fortune that the marijuana on deck brought those campers.
Right.
In that spring of 1977.
Yeah. Selling weed is a good thing. It brings money to do other good things.
Yeah. And it was so funny in the interview. She's like cast as, and I'm sure at the time, they were doing acid on marijuana. Like, her husband's this drug smuggler. They have a young daughter. She was like in whatever state of mind, but she was so freaked out because he was afraid someone was coming to kill him, and that's a whole other conspiracy, is that like someone tampered with the engine and that's why it went down.
If he was smuggling drugs, it makes sense why he would be paranoid for his family, and there's probably a good reason for it.
Yeah. And she didn't believe that he was dead for a long time until like somebody in the media was doing a story about this and had uncovered a picture of his corpse, and he was like, do you want to see it, to Pam? And she was like, yeah, because like her heart was still yearning, like
that's
maybe
so
he's
sad.
out there somewhere. And then that kind of like gave her closure.
Yeah, that's really sad. It sucks like jumping from something sad to this, but this makes me think of, did you ever hear that story where the airplane dropped like a giant brick of cocaine in the forest and a bear ate it?
No.
Yeah. This was like a story, I think maybe a year ago, but like basically that same thing happened. Like, I think either the plane was going down or the pilot like thought they were going to get caught, so they like threw the cocaine out of the plane. But yeah, and then a bear ate all this cocaine and died, and they like found all this cocaine like in the bear.
God. That's so interesting that they decided to do an autopsy on the bear.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look back at it.
It's a story for another time.
Because this was a long time ago. But yeah, it's a story for another time.
It does make me think of that too, just how the stories connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you hear about this story? I've never heard of it. Oh, okay. That's cool. How did he hear about it? Do you know?
He did freelance work, and then somebody from the national parks contacted him to make a script for the podcast. And this was just like one of the stories, and he was telling me about it. And I was like, I want to do research on this too.
That's
and learn
so
about
interesting.
It. Yeah.
I'm surprised we haven't heard of it, because I don't know. I'm really familiar with Yosemite. Like, I've been there, and I feel like they should capitalize on that. Like, sell like Dope Lake like t-shirts or something.
There
and maybe
is
they
a
do.
t-shirt. There is
Okay.
one on Amazon, and I couldn't order it because it's non-essential during quarantine, and the reviews were bad. But it basically was like yellow, and it looked vintage, and it was printed on green, and it was a picture of a lake and an airplane wing sticking out because like that's all you could see from it at the crash site. And it said, "I got mine at Lower Merced Pass Lake," and it was like a little pot leaf on it. And I was like, I would, yeah, that's like really cute and funny.
Yeah. Yeah, we need some.
Yeah.
If you're listening, feel free to
Send
reach
it.
into our DMs. We'll give you our PO box and you can send us shirts.
Speaking of sources, I'm going to share my sources real quick.
Okay.
So I have The True Story of What Happened When a Plane Loaded with 6,000 Pounds of Pot Crashed in Yosemite by Greg Nichols. That's an article. Remembering the Time It Rained 6,000 Pounds of Marijuana on Yosemite in active NorCal. It happened in Yosemite Park. Remarkable events that happened that shaped history. A book by Ray Jones and a Snap Judgment podcast. The episode titled Crash and Burn. So that is where I learned everything I could about Dope Lake. There's a lot more out there. There are t-shirts, like Kath said. If you want to sponsor our t-shirt wearing, then reach out.
Please do. Well, anyway, thank you, Hayley, for that story. Thank you for listening. We're going to go party in our house because it's quarantine. So 3, 2, 1, class dismissed.